Awesome. Thank you so much. And sorry to the folks who've been waiting. And welcome everyone to Mannys Super Civic Cyber Conversations. Mannys, of course, is my small business, and we're a physical space in San Francisco. But unfortunately, with the shelter in place, we had to close. And even though the space is closed, the work is not over. And so we decided to start and launch a series of online programs, which is where you have tuned in today. It's Mannys Online. And thank you everyone very much for tuning in. You can tag us throughout the conversation at Welcome to Mannys if you'd like. And just so you know what's going to happen, this program is 30 minutes. There's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes of Tom and I speaking, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to write in your questions. If you have a question for Tom Steyer, you can just type it in at any time, and we will answer it at the end. Tom Steyer, what an honor!
Hey, how you doing? Nice to see you.
You too. I have to just say, it's so surreal and also a real honor to bookend your campaign. You know, you did your first event at Mannys, and now, you know, the campaign's over and we get to talk again. So it feels cool.
Well, it's nice to be here in San Francisco.
Oh, are you in San Francisco?
I am.
Good. Okay. So first of all, Tessa and Sam wanted me to say hello to you. So they say hello. And just so you know, this is going to be kind of rapid fire, all right? So I'm just going to ask you lots of questions, and it's going to be like one 15-minute long popcorn session, okay?
Great. Good.
Debate stage. What did Bernie and Liz really say to each other?
They were arguing about whether they'd call each other a liar on national TV. And they were kind of both a little upset and both trying to figure out how to resolve that, either right then at that moment or wait until afterwards and do it offline. But they were basically must have been holding it in because they'd had that argument about whether he had said that a woman couldn't be elected president.
Right. I guess follow up to that is, did folks have a lot of time offline to talk to each other, or was it kind of you only saw each other on the debate stage?
No, I think both on before the debate and then in the middle of the debate and then after the debate, there was actually time to talk. And there were a lot of events, Manny, where all the candidates would be asked to go, and some subsection of that would in fact go, so that you'd run into people periodically and have it's kind of like an athletic contest. If you're playing some game seriously, you run into the other people who are playing that game seriously, and it's, kind of somewhat competitive and somewhat friendly.
Got it. How did the debates change as they got smaller, Tom?
Well, I think I felt as if I got more of a chance to speak. I think when you're in those huge debates, I thought it was almost impossible to be heard. And I always felt as if those debates were run by media insiders who were buying into the media inside Washington view of American politics. And so I think, it's very funny. I spent so much time trying unsuccessfully in those debates to say about foreign policy. You guys keep asking the same foreign policy questions. And you keep acting like only people who understand the Middle East are good to be president. But actually, our foreign policy issues are much broader than just protecting oil in the Middle East. And could we talk about the other international ramifications of what's going to happen to America, as well as going over and over and over again, whether you voted to invade Iran or Iraq in 2001. And it was impossible. And, in light of the coronavirus pandemic is a perfect example of, like, I just kept saying, could we think about the other parts of this, or do we have to keep going into Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan over and asking the same question every single debate? And they never really got off it.
You also, one last thing about the debates, you always looked right at the camera when you were talking, which the other candidates didn't do. Why did you do that? Where does that come from? And yeah, what was that about?
Well, I mean, it was really funny, Manny, because you're on a debate stage.
Yeah.
There are these other candidates with you. there are several hundred or a low number of thousands people in front of you. And then there are millions of people on the other side of the camera. So who are you really talking to?
Right.
I mean, my attitude was, I'm not talking to the other people. It isn't really a debate. It's a TV show. It's not a debate. You know, they didn't really try to get to the answers. They tried to promote conflict and interest so that they get people to tune in. And so my goal was simply to, as much as possible, be able to say directly to American citizens who are watching, here's who I am, here's what I care about, here's what I'd like to do.
Okay. Those are my questions on the debate. Which other candidates did you hang with the most?
Well, I don't think I really hung with any of the candidates, to be fair.
Okay.
I think, you know, by and large, I had respect for all the candidates.
And you had prior relationships with most of them, didn't you?
I'm trying to think if there's anyone who I didn't.
Marianne?
I didn't know Pete Buttigieg before this. I think almost everybody, I'm sure I forgot somebody else, but by and large, I knew everybody else before this. So I had some relationship with everybody.
I want to ask you about South Carolina. I know you and your wife, Kat, have a special connection to South Carolina, and she loved living there for a month. Can you talk about South Carolina and your relationship with it?
Well, South Carolina was the first state where there was, I mean, Nevada and South Carolina were the first states where there was a significant proportion of people of color, of Black and brown people.
Yeah.
And in particular, South Carolina, the Democratic Party has a huge proportion of Black people. And so that really colored that primary. Obviously, there are a lot of white people there too, and there are also Latinos and Asians and Native Americans, but to a large extent, that is a white and Black society. And the Democratic Party has a very high proportion of Black people. And so that was something where I found the people of South Carolina in the Democratic Party, we both had a tremendous amount of pleasure meeting them, interest in understanding what they are faced with, enjoyment of their religious tradition, very particularly, fascination with that deep South history going back to and past slavery, and just just understanding where they were coming from and who they were. And so we met a lot of people in South Carolina, white and Black, who were part of the Democratic Party, who we really got a gigantic pleasure in knowing and getting to know and learning from. And I think, when we got into the more diverse states, I think our team, we had a very diverse campaign staff. And I would say, that was true of Nevada too, although it didn't get covered the same way. We really had a fantastic time.
So this is a hard question to answer because I'm sure every day was different, but take me into what a typical day was like being on the national stage running for president. When did you wake up?
My day was basically, I'd say a typical day was kind of 8 to 8, maybe 8 to 9, where I'd get up at 7 and have a breakfast presentation, kind of something between a town hall, maybe basically giving a short presentation, 10 to 15 minutes, followed by 40 minutes or 45 minutes of questions, and then talking to people individually.
Okay.
Probably do, on average, 3 of those a day, driving between events, talking to reporters on the phone, maybe doing some form of more formal radio or TV presentation, 1 or 2 during the day, finishing up with a town hall that would start, I would say typically at 7 o'clock and get out of there at 8:30 and be back at the hotel somewhere around 9 to eat dinner and maybe work out. I tried to work out every single day, Manny. The things I said to the campaign staff is I need an hour workout every single day, and I don't think I missed a day. I might have missed one.
Wow.
And I need a chance to go to church on Sunday to kind of get my head together and remind myself about some framework of what we're all trying to accomplish. And it turned out that that was something that, sometimes I go to more than one church.
Sounds like quite a grind. It sounds like a grueling schedule, honestly.
Well, I would say over that roughly 8 months, I had 4 days off, which was Christmas Eve, Christmas, New Year's Eve, and New Year's.
Damn, that is not
including
much.
weekends.
What was
It's
the
like
strangest?
weekends are a great day to campaign.
What was the strangest state fair food item that you had to eat?
Oh gosh, well, the state fair that I went to this year, which was not the first. I've been to, I started Next Gen America, which is a organizing group for young people that also does a lot of door to door for not young people, and that's in 11 states. Next Gen, and one of those states is Iowa. So we've been organizing in Iowa since 2013, and my mom's from the Midwest, and my uncle lives in Iowa. So I've been going to state fairs in the Middle West since I was a teenager. I've been to the Iowa State Fair before, and they have a lot of food from Iowa that is, what you'd think of as real heartland food.
Mm-hmm. So not San Francisco food.
I don't know how much you know about this, Manny, but I've talked to people from outside the Bay Area and from outside California who've been to San Francisco, and they will say to me, if you can believe it,
Yeah.
there's nothing to eat in San Francisco. I thought I was going to starve to death.
What?
I know. You kind of go like,
where are they going that they have nothing to eat? We have a farmer's.
They said none of my restaurants are in San Francisco.
What does that mean?
Fast food places.
Oh, but
that means chain restaurants that they go to everywhere in the United States. And they literally have said to me, it's like a food desert.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm sitting there going like, you think we live in a food desert? Let me say this.
That's insane. Oh my God.
Isn't that funny? They literally said, I thought I was going to starve to death in San Francisco. Yeah.
That's insane. That is insane. But you still haven't answered my question. What was the weirdest thing you had to eat in the campaign?
Look, God, I never eat it, but I've eaten pork burgers.
Okay.
You have a lot of the kind of stuff that's wrapped in stuff.
Yeah.
You think of as corn dogs as an obvious thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of stuff wrapped in stuff. There's a lot of really big sweets.
Oh my, okay.
It's a lot of big stuff.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
That's what I love state fairs. I mean, there is a chance, if you like animals, you go to the livestock pavilions and people have basically taken their prize calf, piglet, horse, and dressed them up and combed their manes and twirled their tails and put ribbons on them, and the whole family's sitting there while you go around. And the people are so nice, and we have a farm, so we sit down there and ask them about it, and it's a total gas. If you like animals, it's just a gas.
So do you think Iowa should lose its first in the nation status because of what happened this year?
Well, I think that was a one-time thing.
You think so?
I think the distorting part of the race was having the first 2 states where people spent a year where the media acted like it was the be-all and the end-all.
Right.
The more than 90% Caucasian. Yeah. And that's just, for a Democratic Party, that's just a strange thing to do. And I understand why those states actually take it really seriously. And the people in Iowa and New Hampshire are amazing in terms of the amount of work they do. But that was a very distorting part of the campaign, I believe.
How many of those tartan ties do you have?
Quite a few.
So it wasn't the same tie that you just pressed. What was a campaign stop that sticks out most in your mind looking back?
By the way, let me say one thing, Manny, just to go back to the state fair.
Okay.
not about food. But you should know that one of the events at the state fair that I know that you would enjoy and would want to participate in as fully as you could is the Outhouse Race.
What's that?
You put an outhouse on wheels and race it down to the end of a field, clean it.
It's full?
It's of like mud,
Okay.
and then race it back to the other end.
And why would I like that?
I was kidding. I can't imagine you'd like that.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
It's hilarious.
Oh
It
my
is
God.
literally, who has an outhouse race? Made me laugh so hard.
That does sound fun. What was it? I'm going to end with some serious questions, but I have a couple more kind of anecdotal ones. What's a campaign stop that sticks in your mind from when you look back? A memorable stop.
Not just one, but I'll give you an example of a couple. I mean, one was talking to some nurses who were unionized in Iowa, working in state mental health facilities, who were treated so badly in terms of they didn't get overtime because they treat them as teachers, even though they're not teachers. So teachers don't get overtime. They got a raise and the state legislature took it away and built an airport. They got beat up because they're nurses, not exclusively, but majority women, some of them quite petite, in the facility, not unusual to get beat up by one of the, clients, and then would get fired for not getting back to work fast enough while they were hurt and couldn't get back to work.
Wow.
I know, it just breaks. I had that, and there were so many times when I'd learn something about injustice in our society. And it's just, you can't get, it would just be, I'm never going to forget that. Mm-hmm. That's an example. But there were, in South Carolina, talking to people where the state would not give them a water treatment facility. So they were getting sick and it was ruining their kidneys and they were dying. It's like, and I thought, well, it's got to be really expensive. They were spending $16 million a year for their water as a group, rural, overwhelmingly African-American community. And they're paying, and the treatment facility cost $12 million and they wouldn't give it to them. It's just, you see stuff, talking to Native Americans. I was at a Native American conference that asked every single candidate to come. I was the only candidate who came. And we were going through some of the things going on, including, there are 5,000 missing Native women. I don't know if you know that.
I did. I interned with President Obama's tribal liaison. And while I was there, we were doing the reauthorization of the VAWA, the Violence Against Women's Act. And I actually had to write some briefs about the violence against women on tribal land, and it's horrific.
And so hearing that and then understanding why those women are missing, sitting there and talking to Native American men and women about violence and sexual violence. And it was just one of those things. I mean,
yeah.
As I said to one of the groups that I'm talking about, I said, look, I don't know whether to cry right here or get mad as hell. Go pick a fist fight. Tell me what to do. Because it's upsetting when you see what some Americans are undergoing on a regular basis. Or, hunger, seeing hungry young people understanding the recurrence and growth of sex trafficking. When you run into it and you start to see that the places where it's really localized, and it's, you can't forget that. It's an experience and a learning experience that to me was profound. And I think this whole process was a learning experience for me in terms of hearing straight from the horse's mouth what Americans are, what American lives look like in different geographies, different backgrounds, different income levels. It's a hugely positive experience as far as I'm concerned. I feel a much better person for it, and I have a really profound respect for the people of this country.
Tom, we're supposed to end at 5:30, but I have a couple more questions and I want to get to audience. Can I get 10 more minutes of your time? Can we end at 5:40?
You're gonna have to double my fee.
Your fee. Well, this is there's no fee.
Exactly. 2 times 0, 0.
Okay. When you and I talked, we were the first event of your campaign, which was a huge honor. I asked you what you think needed to happen to restore our faith in the office of the president. It was my final question. I'm going to ask you that same question now, with your campaign having been run, and I want to ask you that same question again. What do we need to do to restore faith in the office of the president?
I think we're going to have a president who is unflinchingly honest, compassionate, and competent. And I think there's nothing short of that will do. It's, my parents really moved away from the Republican Party permanently because of Richard Nixon, because they said we cannot have a president who lies. Can't have it. System doesn't work.
Right.
Compassionate. Look, the president is responsible for the health, safety of the American people. If you don't care about Americans, I got no interest in you. Mm-hmm. And competent. This is a real responsibility. It's not one responsibility, it's a massive set of responsibilities in terms of taking care of people in the short, medium, and long term. And, there are a lot of tough questions to be answered, and there are no perfect answers a lot of the time. But you need somebody who's engaged, knowledgeable, relies on experts, is competent.
Right.
And, we don't have that. And you can see the result is the system does not work, and we're watching the system when it looks like what it looks like when it doesn't work.
Falling apart. You have states fighting for themselves, fighting against each other, fighting against the federal government for resources right now. I mean, it's pandemonium. This is an opportunity for presidential leadership. We've handed this opportunity to our commander-in-chief, and it is just completely being missed. Opposite. We're going backwards. He's making it harder for states to protect their own people. It's enough to make your blood boil. I want to get to 2020.
It's enough to make you think, Manny, that maybe we should have called it the need to have impeached campaign.
Well, he did get impeached. Your campaign worked.
Well, we need it. Everyone said for 2 years to me, we'll just vote about it at the end of 2020. That's good enough. It's kind of like, well, now we're seeing.
Right.
Actually, we needed to boot his ass out.
Yeah, lives are on the line.
Yep.
So, Vice President Biden will be our nominee. You endorsed him immediately after you ended your campaign. Why Joe Biden?
I actually didn't, to be fair, Manny.
Oh.
What I said all along was I will support the Democratic nominee regardless of who he or she is.
Got it.
And at some point after I stopped, someone said, are you going to endorse Joe Biden? I said, it's overwhelmingly likely at this point that he's the candidate.
That's right.
And I will certainly support him 150%. But I've always felt, and I thought in 2016 the same thing, that the American people get to choose.
Right. Are you nervous about the American people unifying around a candidate when the last two candidates could not have been drawing from more different slices of our party? I mean, there really were the opposite ends of the party in many ways, and now everyone's got a kumbaya. How are we going to do that?
Well, let me make a couple points. I don't think that Joe Biden is in the far right side of the Democratic Party. I think that people are going to discover that he's much more progressive than they understand, and that his heart is in the right place, and that he is an honest, compassionate, competent person. So I think that's going to be maybe it's going to be a surprise to some people, and I think it's going to be incumbent on the Biden campaign to make that clear. Look, Manny, you know from knowing me that I'm a turnout person.
Yes.
If Democrats show up, we win. And it's going to be important that we have a candidate that people trust and believe in. And I think this campaign has got to make that point that this is a trustworthy candidate whose heart is in the right place, who understands the issue and is going to do the right thing. So I'm not at all, I know there's a meme out there, I read the stories in the paper about, we all need to come together and that's going to be hard to do. But I truly think this campaign is going to be able to drive home that point, including specifically to young people.
Right.
That this is an incredibly wide gulf between the two candidates, and that our candidate is, in fact, an honest, compassionate, competent person.
Well, that gets to my last question. Tom, you are one of the most powerful people in the Democratic Party. You were before you ran for president, and your run for president only made that more so. And that is a responsibility that you have taken to heart very deeply. And I just want to say, as someone that is on the bottom ranks of all this, someone on the ground organizer, I'm really glad that we have Tom Steyers to power our movement. What are you going to do to make sure that we win? Because I know this is something that you're thinking about a lot.
Well, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, Manny. One of the things that, I set up Next Gen to do youth organizing because people under 35 are the biggest generation in American history. People under 35 are the most diverse generation in American history. They're the most progressive Americans by far, and they've been voting at half the rate of other American citizens. So even during my campaign, Next Gen America was out registering, engaging young voters to make sure, because if young voters show up, we're going to win. And we're not just going to win the presidency, we're going to take back the Senate, and we're going to keep the House, and we're going to win stuff that people don't even know is going to be competitive.
Yes.
If people show up. We are going to kick their ass.
Yes.
And it's all of it. So that's been going on. It continues to go on. We obviously have to move to complete digital organizing because we can't be on the ground right now. But that's been going on, for all of 2019 and every single day so far in 2020. That's baked in the cake. We also do a big organizing effort with some national unions. It's knocked on 25 million doors in the last 2 election cycles that we're not knocking on doors. That also has to be digital for the time. Right. That's going on. Secondly, I've not taken a day off since the end of my campaign.
Wow.
I've been trying to make sure that the climate community, which is includes environmental justice people, it includes specifically young organization and young activists. It includes the mainline, what I think of as the established long-term environmental organizations. It includes the people who are involved in the community in various ways. Make sure that we end up pulling on the the same direction, so we can both push for the progressive policies we want and also get the candidates we want. So I've worked on that every single day, and that's something the environmental community can splinter. And when it splinters, it has no impact. Right. And so I've been working to try and make sure that we're all, doing that.
Well, thank you for that, Tom.
Obviously we're in the middle of a huge pandemic. And a couple of the organizations that I founded with Kat Taylor, including our bank, has 1,700 applications for loans to respond, to keep small businesses in business during this. So they're going crazy trying to protect small businesses in California on the West Coast.
Yeah, I know what it's like.
And so that's something they're working their tails off. I'm incredibly proud of what they're accomplishing and what they represent in terms of, because we have a huge health crisis, and we have a huge economic crisis from the health crisis. And so they're going crazy. And we also we started something about 15 years ago to try and deliver healthy food to public schools, California food for California kids. Well, kids are hungrier than ever. There are no public schools. Their families are healthy. So we're working really hard to try and expand that program to respond to the needs of the moment. Because if you think about it, We can't be in a society, regardless of the health crisis, regardless of the economic crisis, where poor kids are hungry and not getting healthy food. So that's a huge effort that it took us a long time to build that organization. So we're perfectly situated. And, and lastly, I've been thinking a lot about what a just, equitable, green, forward-thinking recovery would look like. Because a lot's going to change whether we like it or not. So let's try and make the change be just, equitable, green, and forward-thinking. Isn't that what
we have an opportunity
for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to say publicly, I'm going to marshal all the resources that I have on my corner on 16 in Valencia with the community here at Mannys to help in all those efforts, and of course to win in 2020. So let's get to some of these questions. Rebecca wants to know who you would have chosen as your running mate.
Well, I can tell you this, there is a 0% chance that it would have been another white male. Mm-hmm. No, from my standpoint, we have a very diverse party. And I think it's, our campaign was over 50% women. It was over 50% people of color. And I think it was around 30% LGBTQ. And some of those things are a little vague because we couldn't ask all those questions, but those are our estimates. And I think that's reflective of our party. I think that's reflective of our region and who we are. And, from my standpoint, in the vice presidential position and in every single other position, it's critical that we have a diverse set of experiences and attitudes, because that's how you get the best decisions. And it's not just justice, it is justice, but it's also effectiveness, and it's the best outcomes come from the most diverse set of people. So I was absolutely determined that, in any one position, you're going to be weighing off a bunch of things, but there is no way that we were going to go to the Democratic Party with 2 white males. That's unacceptable.
Right. Will wants to know if there were moments in the campaign where you felt that the conventional wisdom or the consensus was totally opposite of reality.
Yes. Oh my God. Look, there is such a groupthink in the kind of media and Washington mindset. I mean, I was giving the example earlier of how they think about foreign policy. They think about foreign policy based on a series of wars in the Middle East to protect the oil supply of the world. I'm sitting here going, we have to get off the oil supply. We spend over $700 billion a year, and it's gone up $110 billion under Trump on defense, and a fraction of that on things. We build planes that I would say to people, when was our last dogfight? We have these fighter planes, they're incredibly expensive. When was our last dogfight? When's going to be our next dogfight? When is the last ship-to-ship battle that took place? We build these destroyers to fight other destroyers. When is the last ship-to-ship battle?
Are you asking me? Because I don't know the answer. Korea?
1945? Top Gun was 1990. You know that movie?
Yes.
Yeah. 30 years ago, and it was a nostalgic movie in 1990.
Yeah.
So, is that groupthink? 100% that's groupthink. There is a series of assumptions about how the world works in Washington, D.C. that I don't think are the way the world works. And, there's a series of assumptions about what can't be done that I just don't think is true. You see a national minimum wage of $7.25. I mean, does that make any sense in the real world? There's so many assumptions that people just make and build on. And they assume that any change has to be, tweaked. Like, oh, maybe it should be $7.75. It's like, what?
Yeah.
So I felt like the whole time you're fighting, and those are not assumptions that are just amongst elected officials or in Washington, D.C. Those are the media's assumptions. And if you're pushing back against that, then they feel like, you know, that's really unrealistic. But, you know, what we can see is that's not true. You know, we should be pushing back hard against an awful lot of these assumptions because they've agreed on them, but that doesn't make them true.
Let's do one or two more questions, Tom. Is that all right?
Please.
Great. So Dean has an interesting question. There were no shortage of candidates in the primary with impressive resumes, but only a few managed to get awareness at a national level. What do you think drives who gets traction and who doesn't?
Well, a lot of it, honestly, if you go back and look, depends on what I would call earned media. So the media actually gets an amazing amount of control about who gets heard.
Earned media.
Yeah. You know, appearances on CNN, MSNBC, the nightly news, the Sunday shows, all that stuff, you know, the New York Times, they get to make a lot of decisions about, is this person a serious candidate? And so, you know, part of that is, are they polling, which is a sort of name recognition thing. And part of it is they decide that somebody, based on polling sometimes, and sometimes just on what their choice, they decide to give someone a whole lot of airtime. And if someone gets a whole lot of airtime, they're almost by definition become a fairly serious candidate.
Jesse asks, what does a digital platform, I'm really interested in your answer to this question. What does a digital platform look like in trying to reach communities of color that are not politically engaged? Is there something other than Facebook or Instagram that can reach these and build a volunteer base? Or how do you get to these communities using digital platform?
Well, first of all, I'm the wrong person to ask, although I hope that our campaign worked on that really hard. I think if you're going to reach communities of color on a digital basis, then you have to be working through their existing channels. One of the things that I think about this specific question, but every other question too, when it comes to digital media or media in general, is this. It's a lot easier to get into the flow than to create the flow. So my attitude is, if you want to talk to people, to communities of color, go on the Breakfast Club. Start to work through the places that exist and the people who have credibility already with their audiences and see how people react. And so I think you really have to be working very specifically over in the channels that already exist and try to participate them and get your message out as part of what they're doing.
Okay. There are a couple questions about worries that the economic shutdown and then the news stories of how the environment has recovered so much since then are going to equate economic calamity with environmental health. How do you fight for a green recovery and fight back against the narrative that in order for our economy in order for the environment to recover, we need to destroy our economy?
Well, let me say this. I draw a completely different conclusion from this pandemic. The conclusion I draw is this. Scientists were telling us starting on December 31st, we have a huge problem here. The administration chose to ignore them. Some people chose to listen sooner. Some people chose not to listen at all.
Mm-hmm.
In California, you can look at what happens when you choose to listen early and act on it. So when you talk to me about climate, my answer is, if you are not arguing from science, this pandemic tells you you are endangering the health and safety of every American. There's nothing more to be said. As far as I'm concerned, you have no credibility whatsoever. And the idea that the Republican Party is, still proud of members who actually say, well, There is global warming. It's like, get out of here. That's ridiculous. We can see what happens with an administration and a party that denies science. People die. People get sick. There is immense suffering. This happens to have a shorter time frame than climate change. It also has less impact. As terrible as it is, the potential impact of a changing climate is dramatically bigger than the coronavirus pandemic. So to me, the conclusion I draw, I know we can do this in a way that makes us grow the economy and gets people better employed. I'm not 1 second worried about that. And anyone who says different is lying. But ignoring science is basically ignoring the health and safety of American citizens. It's not acceptable.
I'm going to ask you the last question, which is, what is giving you hope right now for the future?
Look, I always believe in the American people. That's what I learned in this campaign. That's why I'm involved politically. The old Winston Churchill, the American people always do the right thing after they try everything else. Okay, we have now officially tried everything else. And I know that Americans are brave, compassionate, and smart. And so I say to all young citizens, I've got 4 kids between the age of 26 and 31. This is our time. This is our time to take over. This is the time for young people to step up and take back this country. We have to do it. We're going to do it. And you ask me why I'm hopeful? Because that is going to be our greatest success. Saving this country and saving the world. That's what we're called on to do over the next 7 months. And that's what I believe will happen, Manny. That's why I'm talking to you. That's what you said you'd do.
Yes.
That's why I haven't taken a day off since the end of my campaign, because this is our chance to take back the country and save the world. And that's what I want to be one of the people on that team.
Yeah. Gosh, Tom, what a pleasure it's been to spend some time with you again and to speak with you.
It's nice to see you again, Manny.
It's really amazing to watch you. We hosted Democratic debate watch parties at Mannys. We watched all 13 of them, and it was great to see you up on that stage, and it's great to see you again. And I wish you and the family a lot of health and safety right now. I'm going to make a quick plug for my small business for the folks who are watching. There we are. If you'd like to support us, Mannys, we are shut right now. No revenue is coming in, and we are continuing to provide these programs as a public service to everyone. We'll continue to do it, but I am asking everyone on this call's help. Support Mannys by going to the link above my head. It's joinit.org/o/Mannys. And please consider making a one-time donation or becoming a sponsor. We could really use the help right now to allow us to make it through this crisis and reopen our doors. It's a tough time for us. So for those on the call, if you consider going to joinit.org/o/Mannys and supporting my small business, it would mean a lot. Also, I want to say you can tag us at Welcome to Mannys for this conversation. You can tag Tom Steyer at Tom Steyer all over the place. He's got a very active social media. And finally, I'd like to thank my team over here to my right, Sam, Jupiter, and Ram, for putting this all together, and Sam for being our operator for this call. Thank you, Tom, for fighting the good fight and for being one of the people who are going to help us win in 2020. I'm going to be right alongside you, arm in arm, fighting alongside you to make sure that November 3rd is a good day for all of us, okay?
It's nice to see you, Manny. For everybody who's on this, thank you very much for tuning in. And let's make sure we all participate between now and November 3rd.
Yes. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day. See ya.